Hello and welcome to this conversation. The focus of our conversation today is, what does it mean to be church today? Now, many of us have been going through a time of change during the pandemic when the nature of church has changed quite significantly. What we do and how often we meet and so on has changed. And perhaps some of us are hoping to get back into buildings, but what will that mean? What does it mean to be church today? My name is Barry Osborne, and I'm very pleased to welcome two colleagues from Rural Mission Solutions who are here with me. So let me firstly introduce to you my friend Gordon Banks.
Hello and welcome to this short video. I hope you find it enjoyable as we explore what it actually means to be church at this critical juncture of being the people of God.
So let me first of all introduce my friend and chair of our trustees, Gordon Banks.
And welcome to you, and I do hope you enjoy this video short as we explore the nature of church, a critical time at the moment as we've been all thinking about what it actually means when we've not been able to gather in the ordinary kind of way that we may be used to.
And with us also is our mission enabler is David Wells.
Yeah, hello, and it's great to be with you, and I think this is such an important subject as we move on throughout this year.
So I'm actually going to be putting David in the spotlight for this conversation and putting a number of questions to you, David, which I'd value your response to. So the first question is, we know what we call a group of cows, they're called a herd, and a group of sheep, we call those a flock. But whatever do you call a gathering of Christians?
A gathering of Christians would be a church.
You know, it's as simple as that, is it?
Yes, because that's what it originally meant. It came from a Greek word, ecclesia, which was about a gathering of citizens who would meet to discuss things. But Paul took it a lot bigger and said it means anybody, sort of Greek or Jew, male or female, slave or free, that everyone was part of the church, the gatherings.
Right, that's helpful. That gets it really clear. And it puts the focus clearly on the people rather than the premises as the church. We might come back to buildings a little bit later. Okay, so my next question to you is, does the Bible prescribe what we should do when we gather? Does it say whether we should only meet on a Sunday? Does it say anything about hymn sandwiches or sermons? Is it prescribed?
I think that the church, when it gathered, would have some similarities. Yes, there would be a time of worship. There'd be a time of fellowship together. There'd be what they call the breaking of bread. But then I think there'd be a lot of differences, the type of music. They wouldn't necessarily, there wouldn't be a hymn sandwich. We get told a little bit about what it was, but I like to think that it was appropriate for every gathering and every group that were there, did different things, as long as they were worshipping God and being together.
Right. Okay, because I know the Bible does say something, it doesn't prescribe, but does describe. When you come together, everyone has something, and it might be a hymn, or it might be a psalm or a prayer, but the idea of services being multi-voice seems to be part of the characteristics of the New Testament church. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, and I think that we're not quite sure how it worked, but I think the important principle is that everybody brought something to worship.
Right.
It wasn't about people leading and saying this is how we're doing it and we all follow what we're doing. It's about bringing what their experiences in and worshipping God and presenting it to God.
Now, over the years, David, it's pretty obvious from church history that we've institutionalized church, so that now often people do think of it as a Sunday only kind of occasion, and very often most of the people that go to church go there as sort of passengers, sitting back on the receiving side of things. Is there a danger that what we do by focusing on Sundays is that we create once a week Christians?
Maybe there is that danger, but if you look at the way that Jesus taught, he taught about the church being the salt and the light to the world. and that what happens on Sunday isn't the church, it's the church gathered together. But there's also about the church scattered. We need to spread out the gospel.
Right. Okay. Let me bounce the same question to Gordon, if I may, because Gordon, you've done a lot of work in terms of being a mission enabler and working alongside a number of Anglican dioceses over the years. And I am concerned whether we have developed the mentality of Christianity being a once a week thing. What do you think?
I think that's interesting because we do need to grasp something of our history and in fact something of the Jewish tradition as well. And so we do need to think of the import of the first day. But I think the key thing, and I think particularly we've been really blessed with the work of the London Institute Contemporary Christianity. They've really emphasized the fact that what happens on a Sunday must affect what happens on a Monday. And I'm reminded of a colleague, a Church Army colleague that David might know, and on his church, as you go in, it was a kind of a modern community building type church. It said, "This is your church." And on the other side of the lintel, as you went out, it said, "This is your mission field."
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the key thing. So yes, we gather, important we gather, know why we gather, and it is linked in with this whole story of the Sabbath, but then we must do something about it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, here's another question then for David. What can we actually get out of going church? In your own experience, what do you feel that you might get out? What does it do for you?
What I get out of it is being part of the community of the church, being part of a corporate body together. And perhaps it's more important for me because I'm a single person, but being part of a larger whole, a journey, a pilgrim people. There's all these words of being together. And in some senses, I think it's almost the wrong question to say, what do you get out of it? Because it's giving the impression that I'm going to take something. It's about what I give as well. Very much so.
Okay. Now, okay, we'll swing that around in a moment, perhaps, but I think that's interesting about really what people expect when they go to church. I kind of wonder whether people don't expect to be changed. They don't expect that God is going to say something to them. What do you think?
I think that people are quite surprised at times when they come to church because of the welcome, because the experience. And in a good church, sometimes they may come and they may not get what they expect, or maybe they go to a church because it gives them what they want. But that is not really, I think, the model that Jesus presented. The word service for a church in English.
Yes.
And that really emphasizes that we're not there for our privilege and the right, but we're there to serve.
Okay, I think that's a very good point. Let's ask Gordon a moment. Gordon, David has spoken about the importance of the sense of belonging, and that partly by meeting up together, that strengthens that sense of belonging and sharing a journey. Do you think that what sort of percentage of the average congregation do you think has that, or are they looking for something else? What do you think?
But just to flip back, if I might, and just say, for me, one of the things that I am missing at the moment and looking forward to being a sacramentalist is actually the Eucharist, because that is a time when all people of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds and everything humbly come and take the sacraments into their hands, and that for me is just such a profound occasion, and so important. So
That's very helpful. Let's flip the point over then, David, to the issue of what can you actually give. What is your service? What can you actually do? If you're not in the pulpit, you can join in the singing. Is there anything more that you can do, something you can actually give to the rest of the church as you meet?
Well, I think joining in just the singing is important, but I think it's about helping and supporting one another. That sometimes the worship is very important, but sometimes the real ministry happens afterwards, the tea and coffee afterwards.
Yes.
And talking to people, getting to know people, praying for people.
Yeah.
And
I do agree. And
yeah.
and that's always lovely when people are having refreshments after and you see somebody engaged in a meaningful spiritual conversation and perhaps having a brief word of prayer together. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the thorny issue of the buildings. And I'm going to put Gordon in the hot seat now. Gordon, church buildings in our villages, are they a help or a hindrance to what God really means church to be?
This is a video short, so good question. I think, particularly in rural areas, they're an icon of God's presence, and they're important. And they're important because, I mean, some of them, we've got to remember, have been there over 1,000 years, and people have gathered there. Think of all the funerals and the baptisms and the celebrations. And so I think they do pick up something of all those prayers. And so I think we need to be careful how we actually move forward and don't dismiss them too readily. And I think the real trick, what we need to do, and some are actually thinking this way, is we need to separate out, if we like, the care of the building from the cure of souls, which is an Anglican term, means the care of everybody within that in that parish and in that area. And so, you know, we can broaden out the care of the building to a wider group of people as long as they understand the missional focus of why we're gathered and what it's about. But some or other, and I have seen some really good examples, what we're looking for is historical sensitivity, cultural relevance, and fit for purpose in the 21st century. And that can be done. It's a lot of hard work, but now we've got a real good opportunity again to actually look at that and just say, you know, what can we actually do? I mean, you mentioned people going to church. A lot of our churches going across that threshold is just so alien to some people. You know, it's just such an odd thing to do anyway. So we need to be careful of all of that as well. So I think buildings are important because we need to gather somewhere.
Okay, so they have their place. But of course, they do become dominant, and a lot of time, energy, finance, and so on gets absorbed by looking after the building, which isn't always the main purpose for our being around, isn't to be curators of a building. But if it is the house of God, if it is a place where people can meet God, then we need to think, not everybody learns through being sitting listening to something. Some learn by engaging practically. So thinking in terms of how we help people, how we teach, how we let people engage is important. Last thoughts from David.
I believe things are changing. I think things change even more now because of the year that we've had. But I think we're moving away from this idea of the church as an institution because not many people buy into that idea now, to the idea of the church as a community, a living, breathing group of people who worship God, follow God, and seek to give God's love to those outside. And I think that's so important in rural areas. The model I've often used is it's like the corner shop. A corner shop is may not have everything that a big supermarket have, but it's local. It's there for the people. And often many corner shops are open late at night. And we need to be sort of, as the church, the corner shop for God, for God's love, so people will know that that's where they can go to get help.
David, that's wonderful. Thank you. Good closing remarks. And I had an idea that maybe we could put a sign outside our churches, either to take the place of the name of our church usually, although I think in the Church of England it'd be difficult to get away with their particular name and style, but just to have the words House of Hospitality, a place, you know, where you're welcome, where people want to give you something that's going to help and enrich you would be a fundamental thing. Gordon, last thoughts?
I just think as we're going back on this, 3 key words: convenience, commitment and covenant, and thinking of each other. So do we go to church because it's convenient, or not go because it's not convenient, because I've got somebody visiting or whatever? Or are you there because I'm covenanted to be in a mission community with my brothers and sisters? And are you committed to be there? I think we need to move away from convenience to covenant and commitment to one another.
Gordon and David, thank you so much for all that you have shared today. So from the three of us, goodbye, God bless you. Remember to give a thumbs up if you've appreciated this. Look out for further videos that might be helpful to you. Pass it on to somebody else. Use the share facility. Goodbye.